Guys, like, comment, subscribe, share the video, especially if you like MMA as much as I do. Masvidal is fighting Gilbert Burns really soon. Here's the thing. I've already picked Burns, and I'm going to go into detail why I'm picking him, even though I like Jorge Masvidal. The thing is, this is a winnable fight for Jorge Masvidal. This is the most winnable fight Masvidal's had since he fought Nate Diaz. Think about it. Kamaru Usman back-to-back, Colby Covington, they're really good wrestlers. Jorge has always had problems with wrestlers. With Burns has always puts himself in harm's way. He's willing to brawl with guys. So that helps Jorge Masvidal. I do think this fight has what it takes to be a great fight. And if Jorge knocks out Gilbert Burns or wins a stand-up exchange and gets a decision over Burns somehow, that wouldn't surprise me too terribly much. This fight is in Miami, so I do think Jorge's going to put up a really good fight, and I think it's going to be really good for the most part. The problem is Jorge really only has two ways of winning this fight. He needs to knock out Burns, or he needs to keep his distance like I talked about, and he needs to be able to get some good exchanges and not go into a brawl mode with someone like Gilbert. Because just because Gilbert goes into brawl mode, he can also take you down and submit you, or just take you down in general. And when Jorge gets taken down, he loses his fights. So for that being said, I think Gilbert is going to be able to do enough standing up with Jorge. I think he'll be able to avoid the big shots and avoid getting knocked out or finished. I think Gilbert will take advantage of Jorge's best suit in this fight, his best weapons, and those are his hands. I think Jorge's going to overthrow a few times like this, and when you overthrow like that, you leave your body open, your legs open a lot. So when he does that, I think Gilbert's going to take advantage of that and take him down. I think Gilbert's going to be okay with a boring fight. He'll take Jorge down and wrestle him and probably go for submissions. Now, I'll give Jorge credit. He doesn't get submitted in his fights. He might have been submitted once or twice in his 50, 60 fights, but lately he doesn't get finished like that. He gets finished standing up, or he gets dominated by the wrestling. So even though I think Gilbert can be reckless at times, like he fought with Hamzat and goes into brawl mode and puts himself in harm's way, I don't think he's going to be putting himself in that much of harm's way just because of his skill set and the way he fights. Because he can submit guys, knock guys out. He can dominate with wrestling and get a decision. And I do think his stand-up is good enough to hang, not just good enough, but more than good enough to hang with a guy like Masvidal. Because he does hit hard and he can knock you out on the feet. And even though I don't think he'll necessarily knock out Masvidal, even though it's definitely possible given he has knocked guys out before, he's more of a threat standing up than Colby Covington was. The reason why Colby Covington was able to outstrike Masvidal is because he was able to mix up the wrestling, and then later in the fight he would stand with Jorge when Jorge's tired because it's his own fault, and then he'll land some big shots and pick Masvidal apart. And that's how he was able to do that. Burns won't need to do that. He can simply stand with Jorge and avoid getting hit. And then Jorge puts himself in harm's way. He can hit Jorge and knock him out or drop him with a bunch of strikes and get on top of him and just hold him there for a long time. So Gilbert Burns, either by a one-sided decision with his wrestling and he wins this fight easily, or he can TKO, knock out Masvidal in a wild exchange, and most likely can get the best of it because, again, Gilbert's got some really good stand-up skills, just like Jorge. Jorge will probably get the better of a wild exchange, but Gilbert, I think, would most likely win just because of the fact that he can beat him with wrestling and submission skills. While I don't think Gilbert will finish this fight, I do think Gilbert wins with the wrestling. I think he's smarter in this fight. He's more technical. He realizes, okay, guys that were okay with a boring fight and just simply wrestled Jorge easily won the fight. That's what I need to do. And Gilbert wants a title shot. He's going to be able to do that. I think he wins this fight by unanimous decision. I do think that the stand-up exchanges will be pretty even, but I don't think Jorge is going to knock out Gilbert. Now, if he does, it wouldn't surprise me. That's just how I see that fight going. Again, it just goes down to who has more skill to win this fight. And easily, that's Gilbert Burns, because he can knock you out, choke you out, submit you. He can out-wrestle you, out-grapple you, and get a decision off of you. So as far as that goes, Jorge just doesn't bring enough to the table in terms of skill set. He has heavy hands. Yes, he can hurt you standing up. Yes, but if Gilbert wrestles him and gets him tired like Colby did with Jorge, Jorge won't be able to finish the fight, even if he has a chance to finish it and make it an interesting fight for a little while. So I got Gilbert winning the decision.